innovating the process, can't you see? With the platform so smooth, keeps the workflow tight. Efficiency and value, that's every single night. Risk profiles, they got 'em, man, it's no joke. North America's the stage and they never choke. Metrics on point, updated without fail. Chameleon carriers, they're on the trail. Don't play with unsafe companies, don't be that guy. eCarrierChecks, keeping it safe under the sky. 40 plus filters with the search that can drive carrier information in the FMCSA archive. Find your carrier with precision and needs. Location, equipment feeds. They got the keys. FTL shipper leads. They're right there for you. Real-time authorities, what they do. Crazy, breezy, ultimates. The dashboards, way freedom from low boards. They got it every day. eCarrierCheck's the architect leading the way.
Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome back to another show with eCarrierCheck. Jared and Nate here.
What's up, guys?
We're excited to talk to everyone today, and hopefully we can help some people find their sweet spots. Whether you're a carrier or freight broker, we want to help you find your sweet spot. Jared and I had some time to talk yesterday, and we also had some time to talk with that brokerage here local, and something that caught my eye was just how they were working throughout the day and trying to find their sweet spot. So that's something we did yesterday with them, and I highly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But first off, before we get into all that, it was a short week for me because I was gone. I was sick.
It's sick.
It happens.
Oh, goodness.
Getting cold in Nebraska. But Jared, I just kind of want to know how the week went for you. I know you were answering the phones this week. You were talking to all the brokers and carriers. I just kind of wanted to catch up with you and see how that all went.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I thought was interesting about the week was a couple things that was nice. The first thing is that I helped some people. What's up, T. Harris? What's going on? Let us know how your weeks were, guys. We love to hear you. We love to support you. We're just a good community. You know what I mean?
Ask us anything.
Ask us anything. We're always here to support and rise the boats. You know what I mean? Again, the hot topic is always and still will continue to be is separating yourself or being different in all these sales motions. Trying to find the right trucks for dispatchers, right? Trying to find the right shippers for those brokers and the carriers out there that we do talk to, and we talked to quite a few. Freight Master Resource, what's up, man, brother? If you guys haven't seen his Facebook page, man, go check it out. This guy brings the house. He's got a huge community.
He's on YouTube as well, so
I can't get enough of this guy. But one of my favorite calls this week was a broker that was looking for just extremely difficult trucks. He was looking for some extremely difficult trucks out in North Carolina to find. And I couldn't believe it. He's like, well, I really need this specific type of trailer. He was looking for steerable RGNs, but he had to have a specific axle count. Luckily, our system was able to pull it up for him, and we were able to at least call these 12 people. They have that type of equipment because of how our VIN data works, because of how Trevor, our programmers are incredible. They can kind of manipulate things for us. And so, I'm a big fan of, if you're a broker right now, if you're a carrier right now, take a deep breath and start to think about each week, how can I build some relationships in my life? This broker was literally looking, he's like, hey, I just brought this guy on. I didn't get the actual bid. We're talking about this a little bit. He goes, but I didn't get the bid. But what I want to do is I want to build some relationships with carriers so that next time that bid comes out, I can get it.
Yeah.
And I loved that conversation.
Yeah.
He's kind of forward thinking. Even our programmer was talking about how right now is that time to start building relationships with carriers that can still be there for you when the market does flip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm going to plug us up really quick. eCarrierCheck, people always ask, how are you guys different from others? The one thing I love about our carrier data, our developers, they went hard on the carrier side of this because the last 3 weeks, we've had one of our subscribers, at least once a week, reach out trying to find insane equipment that they can't just find off the board, or they can't just call because they just can't find them, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about eCarrierCheck, how you can find those carriers that you probably wouldn't be able to find anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. The way we've actually classified
Hey,
Like,
good morning, Michael.
some of the people
Good
say,
morning.
hey, what's the difference between you and just going on Safer or FMCSA? And we have taken things to a sortable level. Yesterday we talked to a guy that flips trucks in Florida. That guy was kind of wild, man. Like, he was like, hey, I need these specific types of Mack trucks in Florida. I think we pulled up like 500 companies for him to call. It was kind of crazy. And he was also doing the same thing. He goes, my balance right now, he wasn't hitting his sweet spot. He had more trucks going out than he had trucks coming in. So he needed to start making calls to carriers to see what they were selling.
Right.
And we were able to show those lists to him. And that was wild to me.
Yeah.
I loved that conversation. I really enjoyed it because we talked about marketing with him. We talked about kind of both sides of his company.
And the amount of insurance people on our site too, using it to their advantage. We're not just built for just your average freight broker, carrier, dispatcher. There's other people on the site that it really does add value.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing,
Absolutely.
boy, you're going to the moon.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to the moon.
I think something that, obviously we're talking about hitting our sweet spot, and we're talking about, the day-to-day of brokering. And if you look at your day, like, if you ask yourself the question, like, what's one thing I want to get accomplished today? Or in 3 years, what's my job going to look like? What's my company going to look like? And I think you need to kind of balance between that day to day and what I need to do every single day, and balance out that 3-year march, right? And I don't think it's necessary to go 5, 10. I think it's just important that you continually focus on those functions. But on day to day is what we're talking about and hitting that sweet spot. But here's what I thought was probably one of the more interesting quotes I've heard. What's up? Michael's. One of the best quotes I've heard or listened to in a book this week is so on point for what we're talking about. Is, on a day-to-day, brokers are bidding on freight. They're working on RFQs, requests for quotes, or even RFPs, requests for pricing. This is kind of that time of year when people those shippers start getting their freight out for next year. They're handling calls, they're handling billing, they're trying to, figure out what's for dinner.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got families, we got lives. And the best quote I've heard today, and this is why I think it's so important to time block, is it says, if you have diluted focus, right, you're going to get diluted results. And so I just listened to this in a book. It was an incredible book. I'll have to pull it up and tell you which book it was because I read too many. But I loved that quote because if you think about your day, like sometimes how often do you go home in the day and say, did I get anything done? Especially in this industry.
Right.
This industry is wild. You know what I mean? Like how often do you go home and go, man, I didn't get anything done today? Or I got pulled in 30 directions and I didn't get one of my goals done.
Right. Everything on the board just didn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really what we're talking about today is, okay, how do we hit our sweet spot in each of these categories? And then from there, how do we hit our sweet spot and make sure that we're giving it 100% focus each time we're in that function? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the goal, right? So let's talk about bidding first, okay? Because I think bidding, we get this question all the time. We get, how do I win bids? Or how do I bid on something properly? Or I've got an RFQ, what should I do next? Remember we took a call with that guy? He wasn't even a subscriber. We just took a call with him. We just told him how to work an RFQ.
Yeah.
That was one of the most basic things ever. But there's going to be two things in your day is how do we win an RFQ? How do we bid on an RFQ? And how do you bid on spot market freight? Okay. This is a tough answer, first off, because if you have like some of the software out there, some of that software, and I'm not going to go into names, but some of that software is behind times, right? So it's in the contract, it's a couple months behind, and it's not up to what today is moving the freight for. So in some particular cases, you're either way too friggin' high or you're way too low, and you're going to eat a cookie. You know what I mean? So then you're just sitting there going, what the hell am I doing, right? So, for those of you that don't have a huge budget, because I'm the cheapest guy that's possibly you've ever talked to, get a spreadsheet out, right? And in any particular cases, and if you're living in the spot market, start to keep track of what you're bidding, rates that you're getting from carriers, And try not to get drastic with your swings. Okay. When you get spot market quotes, you're not going to win them all. It doesn't happen. You're not going to win RFQs every time. That doesn't happen either. But what you can do is methodically move your needle one motion at a time, not hugely. You know what I mean? We don't need to overreact. Some people say I overreact to things. We gotta just calmly move the needle, right? And I know that's hard to do.
It is, yeah. You know, when we looking back at that brokerage the other day, you're kind of helping them bidding, right? Trying to find their sweet spot.
Yeah.
And the one thing I do know is that you can't win a bid if you don't bid. So if you're on a board, man, just start bidding. You know, if you made a mistake, it happens. You know, just move forward.
Yeah.
You understand where you went wrong, but you definitely got to put those bids in if you want to win, and you got to get some scars on your back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you know, if you're coming to this industry thinking it's just going to happen like that, you're wrong.
Absolutely.
It's tough.
I think the other thing that's really important, and you know, the other day, my daughter just started basketball. I got to tell you this. My daughter just started 7th grade basketball. A very wildly competitive person, but she also she doesn't give herself much grace. You know, her self-talk needs to be improved.
She feels like she needs to be
feels like she needs to be the best, right?
Yeah,
but she's never played basketball. So I'm like, well, and so every day I get out of the, I pick her up and I said, how did the day go? Did you get 10% better? And finally, she goes, I don't know how to measure if I got 10% better. And I said, now you're asking the right question.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to know, does she understand where I'm going with this? And she finally asked, she goes, I don't know how to get 10% better. I said, well, how many free throws did you make today? She goes, I don't know. I didn't keep track. I said, well, was it better than yesterday? And she goes, yeah. And I said, okay, but the only way you're going to actually get better is to keep track of something you want to measure. And the only way you're going to get better at bidding is to keep track of what you're not measuring, right? So you can't just bid and not keep track of it. We've got to bid and keep track of it and go, oh, this is what I bid it for last time. Let me adjust, right? Let me adjust. And figure out where that sweet spot is. Figure out you can't track what you don't keep track of, right? There's no reason to even, like, well, the hell with it. I got better than I was yesterday. Well, how do you know? You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think it's really wildly important when you're bidding, okay? Get on your computer, make a bidding folder, have an open spreadsheet for spot market loads that you're bidding on, and just put in there OD pair, equipment, weight, so that you know if it's a flatbed or hot shot. And then from there, on this date, I put that rate, right? Maybe put the friggin' the states separately so you can always separate your bids and just say, okay, what I bid on California to Nebraska last week.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
This way you're really keeping track of those spot market bids, right? Now for you guys, those cats that are out there that are bidding on RFQs, right? These ones are a little more difficult, right? Sometimes you have to kind of play a little bit different of a game. It's not something that's moving right now. You need to go out and talk to some carriers. You got to work through those things. You got to have a different conversation. The negotiation, if you're calling a carrier, is going to be always higher, right? That carrier is going to tell you 1,000, but if you told him he was going to have a load every week for the next, 2 years, he's probably going to come down a little bit, but adjust it with fuel and things like that, right? So how do you bid on an RFQ for all of next year? It's a tough one. You know what I mean? You're throwing darts at a board and you don't know where you're going, right? So you've got to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. In my opinion, RFQs, I don't think you have to bid on all of them. Go find a good sweet spot. Talk a carrier, into understanding what it takes to be competitive, to win, but also at the same time, make sure you're covering his costs because you don't want him to go away. And just understand how to build a relationship with him, right? And so those are things, when you're getting into that RFQ season, man, start building carrier relationships. Call them, and just regimentedly just call people until you get either A, the right answer, B, multiple rates so you know where the market's at, or C, just taking the time to, even post up a load and see what today's market is versus, what some of those carriers are. Right.
Now we are in the RFQ, if you will. We're in that season now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're seeing customers, gathering new bids from other brokers.
Yeah.
This is huge because let's just say if I had 2 customers and that's my business, right? And let's say my contracts go up. This right now is the time for me to start hammering the phones, finding more customers and just putting in more the same, in the same customer, put my bids in. But here's where it gets like really sticky, and I feel bad for people that are going through this. If they lose their bid on that customer they had for 2 years, like they have nothing. They're grinding. They have to get on the phone and start grinding. Man.
Yeah.
And I know a couple people that come to mind, and I'm just like, I know they're probably hammering the phones right now. It's a tricky game, man. Like you can't really get complacent or come too comfortable because this type of stuff happens.
Yeah. I think what's probably a really interesting aspect, a lot to talk about what you just said. There's so much going on. Obviously, you've got to keep your eggs spread out.
Yeah, that's
getting over 25, 30% for one customer, boy, that's going to hurt. Getting over that number is going to be painful. Mm-hmm. There's going to be growing pains. Yeah. So keep that in mind when you have your eggs. Now, people have to start somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So people have to start somewhere. You have to keep that in mind. But when you're talking to clients right now, depending on the size of them, that's where, the broker that's calling saying, hey, I got a truck, or the broker going, hey, we help a lot of companies with RFQs throughout 2025 and want to see if we could baseline our business versus what your current, companies are. Would that be something you'd be interested in? Mm-hmm. That's kind of an interesting conversation.
Right.
But if you come at some of those bigger companies with the spot market, they don't have time. You're not a value add.
Yeah.
So there's probably nothing wrong with just saying this right now. Mm-hmm. Even if they don't have RFQs or even if they're smaller, I think it allows them to go, okay, this guy sounds different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, hey, we'd love the opportunity to baseline our current business with what you're doing and see if there could be a fit with our network, not only maybe from a competitive aspect, but from a service standpoint. Mm-hmm.
Boy, those sales calls do really sound a lot different around this time.
Absolutely.
all year. We're, it's October or November, sorry. This whole year we've heard the same stuff over and over, and you keep saying the same thing. Be different.
Yeah.
And especially around this time, you got to really sound different. Prepare for 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Yeah, the ultimate, and we'll do a show on this. The ultimate, rejection here for the next 60 days is let's wait until after the holidays, right? And so I want to talk about that in an entire show. And we'll actually just name the show, let's wait till after the holidays. But I want to give you guys some ideas on what to do and how to manage that. And what does that really mean? What does it mean when somebody says that? You know what I mean? Like we'll break that down. But let's get back to the RFQ, because I think this is something really interesting. There's 2 huge mistakes that can happen with RFQs. Okay. Number one is if you're bidding for freight for all of next year, keep in mind that rates are going to go up through the summer, right? We will probably have a slow Q1, and we'll see rates go up through the summer. And in some particular cases, those rates will go up just in sheer avenue that the fuel will go up. Does that make sense? Yeah. So keep in mind that, yes, you need to be competitive, but you've got to have a little wiggle room in there. So make sure you're not just throwing blindly. You've got carriers to back you up to go, okay, hey, I'm looking at this lane right now from Arkansas to Oklahoma. It's three a week. What's your rate today? Here's the next question you need to ask. What's your rate going to be in July? Because if you don't take that time to be very conscious about it, if you got to hold those rates for 12 months, right? We want to make sure I found a good partner that'll help you, right? Because mistake number 2 is that you underbid and you're stuck for a year, or you have to give it back and that relationship's ruined. You're just lighting it up and just it's gone. It is going to float away in the fire, right? So you've got to make sure that you're really thinking through, okay, how do I get a good bid in? How do I make sure that I'm doing these? The market is small enough, in my personal opinion. When you start calling flatbed carriers, you're going to find that there'll be similar rates, there'll be similar things. You can find somebody that you can connect with and communicate properly with.
Right.
You know what I mean?
How do you know when you've done enough to get a bid in? Like, is it 10? You got 10 quotes from 10 carriers, or 20? Like, how do you know it's like, okay, here's the minimum and here's the highest bids I've gotten? Like, how do am I meeting in the middle here for the bid? Like, what am I doing? How do I know?
I think really you just need to talk to 2 or 3 providers. I don't think you need to get crazy and get 20.
Right.
Talk to 2 or 3 guys, maybe post it up and see what the spot market's, what the difference is, and then work your way backwards. And just say, okay, I got 2 or 3 quotes from these guys that I actually liked or that I felt was a decent company.
Right.
They had good conversation. They have capacity to handle this next year, and then way you go. The incumbent is always the hardest to take out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so that'll be, something you have to work through.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And the markup on this too, like you can't get, like you don't want to see people get crazy on this.
No.
You may just lose that bid because you got a little too greedy or whatever it may be. But
yeah,
I think the markup too is kind of hard.
The markup side of it's very competitive with RFQs. You're not seeing a lot. 3 to 5. Yeah, exactly. I'll talk to 3 to 5. Exactly.
Okay.
See, this is what I'm talking about. You've got it's not crazy amount, but it's enough where you're like, I got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I would be interested to see what Freight Master Resources percentages are when he's like, hey, I'm going to mark this up. Usually RFQs 6 to 12%.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You're not getting crazy. It'd be cool to win an RFQ and be at 30% every friggin' load, but it just doesn't happen. They're usually more competitive than that.
Yeah.
You just price yourself out.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So especially as a broker, if there are carriers involved and they're directly working with that, whew, you got that, right? So that's hitting your sweet spot when it comes to bidding. Always bid.
Yes.
Always keep track of bidding. And then with RFQs, find your sweet spot. You don't have to bid on the whole damn thing.
Right.
Find your sweet spot in that list and go after it aggressively.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the important thing.
Talk me through just really quick on bidding. I know you got a list here. We'll move on, but if I'm on a bid board here and I underbid, talk to me through how a broker handles that. Like, I got a bid, I won this load, didn't have enough cash, I don't want to give it back. I'm taking the loss, right? You know what I mean? Like, you just cut your teeth and move on.
Yeah. In my opinion, I think it's a scar that's needed. Brokers, I talk to brokers all the time that say, hey, I won some of these, spot market loads. Yeah. I lost a couple hundred a load. Unfortunately, those things happen.
That's fair.
Boards are usually wildly competitive.
Mm-hmm.
There's weird anomalies on them. And so even just the email spot market stuff, try to price yourself competitively. Make sure that you are getting some spot market quotes. But in my personal opinion, I think it's important that you're letting the shipper know, hey, I bid this, I underbid it. We're going to still move this thing. Here's the tracking. Here's whatever. Letting them know that you're that type of broker is wildly important and will improve that relationship. Those brokers that I see give a lot of freight back.
Yeah.
I get that. You know what I mean?
What's
Usually
up,
the
Jeff?
shipper takes out their incumbent when they want them to dive to the bottom. That's why you ask, hey, what happened to your incumbent? So you don't have to worry about how hard it is to take them out.
Mm-hmm.
It honestly, you hit it on the head. It's hard to take out the incumbent. It really is. I mean, when somebody's been doing the same freight, I remember next door when we were when I worked for the carrier, trying to underbid us was impossible. We had done that business for 10 years. You couldn't. We had our costs so minimized. We had a routine. We had timing. Everything was just fully working well, right? It was a well-oiled machine. And it was tough to take us out, Now, could it happen? Absolutely. People were always gunning for your clients. I'm sure Jeff can relate to this, or even Freight Master Resource, is every one of your shippers right now is someone's friggin' pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you're always kind of, how much value are you providing, not giving loads back, bidding on things, communicating, servicing them, billing properly. All those things kind of come into play to make sure that you're a good vendor for them as a logistics provider.
Yeah, billing's an interesting one too, because if you're a short, small team or maybe by yourself, like, billing can catch up.
Yes.
Like, I mean, just get stacked. You know what I mean? If you're not doing your billing properly. Or...
Yeah, and some of these shippers, it depends on the carrier too. Carriers, honestly, it depends on the customer. If I'm providing more value and anticipating my carrier customer, I'll add as much as 20% fee. Also, not trying to compete on price alone, being the cheapest. Yeah, exactly. I think you just have to be in the ballpark.
Yeah.
And if you're close enough, right, you can be out in right center. You just have to be somewhere in the mix. Because you're right. Jeff kind of hit it on the head. They'll take out the highest and the lowest and then kind of look at there and go, okay, how much do I know about these 4 companies? Mm-hmm. What have they done for me? How do I feel about these? And just kind of keep going. Right. So I don't like to believe below 15. Yeah, I get it. Okay. I totally get it. That's a good number too. Just that 15% is a good number. There's some movement there. If you're a carrier that isn't normally, he's not available this week, and so I've got to, it's like a bye week in your fantasy football team. You're like, I got to make this work.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean?
I appreciate that.
And so that's I like that number's in there. It's good to know that that's where those guys are at. So, a couple of the things just to cover. We were just talking about billing. The larger clients that we see that I used to work with actually had they have straight up, hey, we're going to pay you in 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, whatever it may be. But here's where your billing can hit a sweet spot, okay? If a customer's farming to 100 other brokerage partners, I won't waste my time. Yeah, I get it. You just got to move on. You really do, because it's hard to even, A, compete. But B, why jump in the pool? That's a pool that is noisy and loud, and there's kids jumping in with floaties. And it's just a mess. The guy at the end has got a drink and a Mai Tai's half spilled in there. It's one of those pools that you just got on a cruise line and it's a hot potato.
You don't want to.
No, like, why is it red? You're like, oh, the guy just spilled a strawberry daiquiri. It's fine. Hey, kids, get out of the pool, right? Get a backup to back up your backup. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you always have to be courting and looking for people that can be in that pool. So, in the billing side of it, though, these larger shippers, they'll say, hey, if you don't bill me in 60 days, we're not going to pay you, right? They'll say, hey, if you're not doing it in this time period or with this level of accuracy, we're going to do this, And so making sure you're understanding a smooth process for your carriers to get their billing in. Because when you get a carrier that just friggin' forgets to bill, I remember talking to a guy. He was an executive at a really large third-party company. I mean, multi hundreds of millions. They're LTL, and he said, yeah, about 20% of our loads they just don't ever get billed. Really? We bill the shipper,
and they just never do.
But the carrier just forgets to bill.
Wow.
And it's like, holy cow, what are we doing? And where do we miss this? And so when you're pumping out some volume, if you're a carrier, make sure that you understand what those brokers' needs are when it comes to uploading PODs, proof of deliveries, bill of ladings, and your invoice. The craziest thing I heard the other day was I had a carrier send in all his paperwork, but he never sent in an invoice. He just wrote it on there, and it was $1,200.
Yeah.
And this broker didn't pay the bill. And their requirements were, I need a proof of delivery and I need an invoice. Okay. Well, he didn't consider that handwritten $1,200 as the invoice. Yeah. Right? He wanted a separate piece of paper. And so making sure you're meeting those requirements as a carrier, and at the same time, if you're a broker servicing one of those larger, shippers, or even a mid-tier shipper, they deserve good billing process too. Making sure, hey, what are your requirements when I get set up with you? How long should I expect it to be paid? When will you pay me after? And making sure that both parties are aware of, hey, the carrier knows if I submit my paperwork with what they asked me up plus an invoice, hey, that shipper's asking the same thing, so that all parties can kind of meet in the middle and accordion properly, right? Now, sometimes there's factoring companies involved, and they hey, you got to get this. There's also, I got to give shout out to Charlie Dahoney. He's got a kind of an AI-based billing agent up there. I think it's called Upwell. Mm-hmm. There's some new technology out there to streamline some of these processes. You can always outsource billing too. Mm-hmm. To a lot of different companies. So where they're chasing loads and saying, hey, I need your POD today. I need your POD today.
Yeah.
Give me an invoice now. Give me an
Just
invoice.
hammering the phones.
Just hammering and just,
Yeah.
keeping up. But, hitting that billing function, I think, is something that if you didn't do in 2024, it's time to start today. And it's time to start to figure out, how do I get cash flow going?
Yeah.
So even if I can get my cash flow down to 26 days instead of 32, well, there's only 250 working days in a year, 365 in a year. 6 days is a huge deal, right? So think about it from that side of things.
Okay.
So
I like that. That's good stuff, Jared.
Yeah, I know we hit that 30 mark. As far as that, if you guys have any other thoughts or questions, we always love our community. We're always trying to educate people on processes that we see work, that work for me. It's not always the way it exactly has to work. That's why we love our audience. These people are incredible. Jeff, thank you for being on. It's always good to hear from you. I would actually like to have him back on just for the sake of hearing how Carrier Broker went.
Yeah.
One of the most up and coming conferences to really bring carriers and brokers together and find just a sweet spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, from the pictures and just kind of the LinkedIn posts I've seen, it looked like it was a great conference. People had fun, learned a lot.
Absolutely.
Networking, man, that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
So,
close us out, Nate.
Yeah, Jared, thanks again, man. I just love that you are able to just kind of give us some feedback from what you've kind of seen or been through. I think it's important. And that's one thing I love about eCarrierCheck. It was built by someone that's been in this industry. You've seen a lot, you've heard a lot, so it's nice to kind of hear your point of view. But to everyone, thank you again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit us up if you ever want to network or just kind of talk business. We're always welcome to listen to anyone.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
Love to hear it.
Yeah.